It's
They
not
be
supposed to
in
be
the same boat.
I think that's so dramatic, and it took him 6 years to graduate college, so I do kind of feel him a little bit. But he studied music. Like, how did it take you 6 years to graduate college and you studied music?
Alright guys, we're gonna go ahead and get
I
started.
think our brothers would be proud. My brother studies philosophy, he's like not on track or anything. Like,
So
6
I
years
could
from the
join
thing,
them,
we're all
except
like,
for
what are you doing?
You'd be silent.
Yeah,
Weird.
like,
Alright, we'll real quick whip around because we're gonna try to get through a lot today. If you could describe your classroom right now, your class success in one word, what would it be? The thing that you're most proud of in one word. Take 10 seconds and then just go for it. Like,
Feedback driven.
Messaging.
Not perfect, but progressive.
you missed one word, but whatever.
Engagement.
Could you shut the door on your way out, sweetie?
Thank you.
Uh,
Actually, no, can you just bring the straights in this white skirt?
excitement or energy.
Yeah, and I think as a department, I'll use that as a class, and I'll say aspirations of where we need to go. And this is going to be a bit of a brutally honest P3, knowing that, just full disclosure, I am going to start shifting away from culture on the 5th grade as much. That has been my priority, and I know that I've deprioritized coaching, and we're going to fix that starting today, because we know that we need to get there. And P3s are important because, like, please send me your own kids' photos, because I've only got 5th graders right now. At the end of the day, like,
Oh my God.
Just so cute.
this is why we're here, and
How can you not want to come teach those little kids?
exactly, and like,
And I know
even
this baby Jimmy Roach, and I'm like, oh.
even if we're about to look at data, just remembering, like, this is the why behind we're here, and after every slide, we're gonna continue to remember those whys, but we have to be honest. And our scores, though better than 2 other schools, we're in the upper half, we still know that this isn't where we wanna be right now.
What is this from?
So this is from module 1 averages.
And can you, I'm assuming it's 5th, 6th, 7th.
Yes, sorry.
is the
Averages
lowest.
on.
5th is at the top, 6, 7, 8. And then if we look at the change from last year to this year, we have dropped. And
What
there's
is-
a lot of factors
that?
that are going into, so this is from module 1 from last year.
Of last year's 5th grade cohort compared to this year's 5th grade cohort,
Yes.
or my group of kids as 4th
Last year's
graders
5th grade cohort to this year's 5th grade cohort. So this is just to put context into all this.
What is Cleve doing that's different?
We're gonna get there. And then when we look at our cohort positions, we did drop, and there's a lot there. But we just need to ground ourselves, and this isn't, we should feel terrible about ourselves or anything. This is just, we know that we've gotta get better, and there's a lot that we can learn from what the league's doing. And the one thing that Freddie and Hobble and Hammond tell me that the league is doing that is pointing most to this growth, and they have dramatic growth, is P3s. So we're gonna change the reality. We know we're gonna get there. We have to get better, so we're gonna have regular and sacred O3s. I'm gonna touch base with each of you today and finalize them from the calendar, and that will be once a week. You and I will sit down and we will either do a second P3 or a data dive that will involve a lot of practicing. Regular and sacred P3s. Those times are going to be sacred going forward. I don't care if there's a fire going on in 5th or 6th grade, these are going to happen. And then making sure, in order for these to work, deliverables need to be sent on time so that feedback can happen from me. I've not been good about that. And then regular and sacred observations. Both short pop-ins and extended observations. And a lot of those will be on your planning periods. I might say, hey, Denton, you want to come observe Christine with me with targeted areas that we're looking for that week. And when you ask, like, what is Believe doing that's different? P3s work. They do. Data's there. Everyone says they work, and I think it is one thing that could push us across as we internalize our lessons more. And if we identify things in the lesson that we're like, wait, I don't understand how this is driving towards the exit ticket, we can also push back in advance so that we make sure that we're doing what's best for the kids and making sure the lesson makes sense. Yeah, what's up?
What does P3 stand for?
Prep and practice.
Prep and practice protocol. So it's just, yeah,
Alright.
that's what you got right in front of you, is your prep and practice protocol. Alright. So, nothing pisses me off more than when people used to say it's not rocket science. Because people used to say, oh, it's not rocket science, kids seem to be reading. It's so much more than that. It is a science. And it's really hard, and that's what we're seeing. And it's also an art. And yeah,
It's a really great
I love
graphic.
some Bob Ross. But we've got to meld the two. And the science piece comes in and the art piece meets when we're in that classroom, but we have to plan for it or else it's not going to work. So, first thing we're looking at, so you have in front of you the prep and practice protocol, and you should have your exemplar in front of you as well. And before this, you should have read the text. Hopefully you've got your exemplar responses. It doesn't have to be your exemplar. That's gonna be the thing with our P3s. We're creating the exemplars here with feedback from each other and building off each other. And you brought your student-facing materials with your answers. Everybody got that? Excellent. So first thing is reviewing the standard. So right now, take 1 minute, figure out what the standard is, and then look at the exit ticket and see how it is reflecting it. So you should be able to say, oh, when this student is answering this question at the end, it's reflecting the standard in this way. Let's go with the old one. In 30 seconds, be able to say the standard is. And I love that Christine's got out her phone, which is what everyone says to do. Because if you don't know it, look it up real quick, because it's a Google that's really simple. Standard is, and the exit ticket reflects because. Because if we can't align our objective and standard to the exit ticket, then something's wrong with either our thinking or something's wrong with the lesson. Alright, I'll just have a volunteer, but just remember, we're thinking like what type of thinking is required by the standard, and what are we driving towards, and how does the exit ticket reflect it? I'll take any volunteer.
My standard is 5.5, which in 5th grade is explain how a series of chapters fit together to fill out the overall structure in a fictional text, and then the exit ticket is, we're basically at this halfway point in the book, so it's like explain how chapters 1 through 16 form an overall structure of the novel. The structure is basically that every time the Native Americans like encounter a problem, they find a way to overcome it, and then the next chapter is followed with like the next problem they have on the trail to tears. So it's like understanding that like they're constantly being persecuted, they're constantly like having to adapt and fix problems and then face new ones. And so like understanding that loop in the book and how it contributes to like their flee to home. And then it ties into the overall question because it's like, how do we define home? And it's like their battle to figure that out every time. That answers the question.
Sarah?
The standard is how characters respond to changes as the plot moves towards resolution. And so the question is basically asking how Esperanza responds to changes in her life, especially through experiences with his character Tio Luis, who's the villain right now. So seeing like how those interactions shape her character.
Joseph, Christine?
So our standard is dealing with poetry, how a poem structure contributes to its meaning. And there are two ways that we look at that. One is looking at the repetition, alliteration, the poetic skills that the author puts in there. And and, talking about how that affects the mood and what we take away from the poem. And then it's also, a tie into a previous standard and an actual core standard for the unit, which is how does the setting affect the character? And so they actually answer questions about identifying alliteration, identifying why the author did that in that line, and then they immediately move into writing an exit about what all of that means on a bigger scale.
Got anything to add, Joseph?
Yeah, I was going to talk about the setting when it comes to crafting and structure, and then the exit ticket, like they're pulling evidence to use the evidence to talk about the setting and the deeper meaning of it, which is also one of the core standards.
Benson?
The standard is, RI-8-1. Cite the textual evidence that most strongly supports the analysis. The, objective, how I would cite that the kids and students will be able to cite strongly text evidence. The exit ticket wants them to write a paragraph, so an AEI, to explain, to give them the assertion, kind of explain why Claudette refused to change her seat, and then choose and cite the strongest text evidence to support that.
Awesome. So we feel good about the connection between standard and exit. Excellent. So again, this is why we're here, even though he runs around the school and is never in class. He's adorable.
He's so cute.
And is really hyped.
Quincy Briggs, he is the record lowest paycheck in all of Kcca, ranking it at 186 negative points at
But
times.
he's also a kid that when certain vitamins are in place, can learn at a high record. Like yesterday got a master in science.
You got master in
exit
science.
ticket, and
Wow. He's very
it's
smart.
pretty incredible. All right, so now we're moving on to the read for just enjoy. And the things we know that this is literal takeaways. We're not looking for deeper meaning. And even when I'm in our coach's PD, I struggle at times. And I'm always like, oh, well, the metaphor here. And they're like, no. You're just looking for literal. And we can plan that out as who, what, when, where, say. That's all you're looking for. And the second read, our deeper read, is when we look for what does this mean for our characters? What does this mean for our theme, etc. So what are the literal takeaways students need to know from the text pages you're reading? And then what annotations or notes are you looking to see? Those are the two big things. And this is when we start to script into our exemplar. What exactly are we wanting to see? So as kids are reading, I'm looking and I'm filling out the who, what, when, where setting, but not just any. What are the important ones? Because like yesterday, even in our meeting, I was doing not roll of thunder, thunder rolling in the mountains, and I listed like 18 people. They called me up, they're like, who are the important people? So I think I was just like, I was doing like bartender, random person on the side of the road. So who are the people, or the literal takeaways that are going to drive our students towards our exit ticket? Take 2 minutes. If you need to flip through your text, please do. What are we going to be looking as we walk around and circulate that students have? And what do those annotations look like? Is it underlined? Is it circled? Is it written in a jot box?
I've been having students in not only this kind of presentation notes as I've been including, so in the lesson it always says, ask these questions if students are confused about is this, so I usually just include those in my comprehension questions to make sure that they understand that so that they're able to access the rest of the lesson. It's like 2 or 3 questions at a time, and then they do the who, what, when, where on for their gist.
I think for pacing reasons, I would script those questions into my exemplar. But I think a lot of us are struggling to get to the exit ticket because we actually have too many questions. And I was just talking yesterday about lessons where we're not getting to the exit ticket, prioritizing which TDQs to actually do. I think this is a quick way to make sure that our pacing is on, is that if there's an anticipated misunderstanding, script the question into your exemplar, but don't have them write it down, and you can pose it to the class. Because posing it to the class and doing a turn and talk or asking for hands is going to be a lot quicker, and students will still get what they need instead of taking 3 minutes for kids to write it down. So I would take the misconception questions out of the packet and put them into your exemplar. You might walk around and there's no reason for kids to answer a question if no one has the misunderstanding. So you have the misunderstanding questions, but if, as you're walking around talking to students, if you don't see it, you can skip it for pacing reasons. If you wanna put them in your pack though, you could also do the same thing. Okay, we can skip number 3 because you guys don't need to do it.
So we can keep them and then just know, like, okay, we got that, cool, you don't have to write that one down.
Yeah, I think that's a big push for us for pacing, is students are answering questions that they don't need to answer. Anyone need a little bit more time? All right, turn and talk with a partner. What are the literal takeaways of who, what, when, where, and setting that students need? Take 30 seconds, go.
Do the same thing with the comprehension questions to give them, especially when they're doing independent reading, and when I circulate, I can see like visually what they're actually understanding as opposed to just watching them stare at the page.
I also think we can have the time I started, like, I have mine now, or not full time, and to check their answers, I'm not actually always versus, because when I used that in soccer school, it was just my touch, and that's what I want to do, is just figure it out with it, make sure it's just fun, so. I don't know, I'm checking it.
Short one.
I think this is more
For
purposeful
them to be able to
than a blank,
distinguish.
like, spot in Dropbox at this
Mhm.
point.
So then I can go around and I just like circulate and put check marks on it, so I don't even necessarily review them.
Yeah,
Right, I check it, if it's wrong, I just keep moving,
Like, I'll ask a
so.
question, and then we'll go over it, and then like some of what we take away, and something that I'm actually like, I know that I don't.
What is yours?
They need to
But
understand what.
I also think that-
what's
Reading more
stated,
purposeful.
like,
Yeah, and it's also like, right now, it's training them to figure out what kinds of things students is like, because like the blank just box for 5th grade, at least, it's like,
And they need
they're
to
just
know.
gonna write the first things they write, or the last things they write, like, we're not, I
It's
haven't
my
taught them yet, like, how to pick the most important things, because we're still working on how did you understand what happened. And so then
So it's a
once
harder
it's like,
text.
do you get what's happening,
And how are you
you're gonna like, I'll ask you or two questions.
What is the
So then I have them do like the central idea or something afterwards, so they're still doing the,
What
what
did
they
the
want,
city
but
law
so.
say?
What would you say they could do
Was
there?
Claude accurate to say actually I had my right?
I think that if we can read the text and understand what's happening, like today, they understood it, and they understood the contrast, and they're great with the skills. I think
Like not even like the
understanding
skill
what we are reading,
specifics, but the text.
like
specifics,
your,
'cause, like,
can you tell me what happened in this chapter,
Yeah.
is the reason these kids are not, or my kids are not
There's a
Yeah.
lot.
really successful. Like, for example, Jerron, I read it, the paragraph to him, and he can answer the structure question. But if I point him to the page and go, what's the structure, he's lost.
Yeah. All right, bring it back in 3, 2, 1. There are a lot of good things, and I asked Sarah and Joey, I was like, what do you think the biggest barrier to this is? And they said, they both were like comprehension, which I think Joey and I have been talking about a lot recently. And this is the section that we should, I mean, we've got to get this before we get onto the read for deeper meaning. I think as a school, that's where we're at, and the kids that aren't getting the read for deeper meaning are missing this piece. So I think 2 people that have best practices that you've seen it work, whether it's like how you do it in the, how you do your annotations, that'd be perfect. Or what you do to make sure that students are getting the literal takeaways. Christine, your kids seem to do it really well. What do you do?
Ask that again, cause I had an answer, but I don't know that it answers your question directly.
What would be a best practice for getting the literal takeaways?
So we do gist ad nauseum, we do gist after everything. And they know that, in my class, a gist is not exactly the Wheatley way, it's, a little bit more scaffolded. And we do as somebody wanted but then so for fiction text. I think it's but so then, but in my class, the poster says then so we go with then so, that's what. And so, unfortunately, my poetry lesson doesn't have it, but today's lesson, I can get copies of for you. They know what it looks like, it has its own little picture, and they know, because the anchor chart on the wall, somebody wanted but then so, 2 minutes, go. And as we walk around, we can see what the misconceptions are, if it's at the beginning, middle, or end. And most importantly, what I have found is that structure forces them to do everything on the checklist. It forces them to remove the minor details and only focus on the major details. And it forces them to immediately identify the main conflict of the story. So for yesterday, we had one, and they all said Esperanza wanted new friends, but she had to have money to pay for a bike in order to get the friends. And that wasn't the main conflict, is that she didn't have friends. These kids were literally knocking on her door, willing to meet her friends. So we had to address that misconception, because 100% of kids started with Esperanza wanted new friends. And we did a whole group come back, talked about it, and said, what is this really about? What are they arguing about? What problem do they need to solve? Well, the problem they need to solve is how they're going to pay for and share co-ownership of a bicycle, and who's gonna ride it on what days. That's what they're arguing about. Oh, well, you didn't tell me anything about friendship. Rewrite it. And then they went through and rewrote it, and they were like, oh, Esperanza wants a bike, but she doesn't have the money, she has to borrow it from her sister, and the result is they own the bike 3 ways, they made friends, they had fun. Oh, it's okay to mention that she makes friends in this process, but that was not the conflict. And that seems to be like a make or break moment for their comprehension, because once they identify that particular moment, everything before and after falls in line. And we have had a lot of success with that. And so now that we have practiced just so much, they have it memorized. It's 2 minutes silent and solo. If it's a tricky one, we let them turn and talk with a partner. But at the end of 2 minutes, you can do a show call if you see that everybody has it. Or it's fun to say, hey, who's your somebody? What do they want? What's the conflict? And then as a class, they realize that they all come together and have written the same gist, and they can check or change it as they move forward. But that allows us to, within 2 minutes, understand what they know, fix the misconception, and get to the read for deeper meaning questions. And we have seen so much growth in the read for deeper meaning just in this module.
That's awesome.
And it was super effective, like with building that habit of putting like an exemplar student work on the board and like checking, like, okay, they have the somebody, they have the want, and they have the but, and then the so. And so they started to see, and they started to do it themselves. Like, okay, I have my somebody, I have my want, and I have the but, and the then so. So like, it was really good for us to build that habit for our students to always be able to check themselves.
Do they write it as a sentence, or is it a graphical organizer?
It's just
Alright, so normally what we would do, but since it's February Day, the day is shorter, and I do want to get to a little bit of practice. On Monday, whenever I check for our exemplars and when we're doing observations on Monday, if you can just, on the first read, have a box off to the side in your exemplar that says misconception cues, and then just identify which questions you're going to know that you're going to prompt the kids to make sure that they have the literal meanings to access the deeper meanings. It can just be a box and say misconception cues. And that's one thing that we'll be looking for on Monday. All right.
Will you send an email?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, another adorable child, one of the best smiles in the building. All right, so we know what we want kids to do. Now how do we set them up for success? And I think this is a piece that we might not think is as important because we want to get to the reading. But as I was telling social studies yesterday, if we're not excited and we're not telling them exactly what we want, it's like a twofold thing, then kids aren't going to be excited and they're not going to know what they need to do. So knowing what you want from students during your RFGJ, so I'm gonna start calling it. Cause I got that lazy, I didn't wanna type it, it wouldn't
Typing, but not in
it
speech.
wouldn't fit on the slide.
I bet it would.
That's just too good of a job as a model size.
So what I want us to
Title
do,
is smaller than the.
this will be our practice for today, is to take 3 minutes, script what we want our launch, so look at your launch, what is it? And if you want to wiggle with your launch, great, as long as it makes sense. And then how does our launch go from launch to your directions for your annotation framework or your thinking track? So we know what we want some students to do for the literal. What's our launch to get them excited, engaged? How do we tell them what we want to see? Take 3 minutes. integrated practice ignited. I'm obsessed with this.
Always what we listen to on car rides. It's like,
Make sure exactly what you want to say is scripted out so you can use your exemplar.
Like,
30 seconds. That is Jersey.
I think it's both. Something is not working, and I really want to wear this jacket.
15 seconds. Free bottle of water for whoever goes first.
Oh, we're practicing for everyone. It's not like a turn and talk.
No, we're gonna stack.
Sorry for whoever's watching this video.
Who wants that free bottle of water?
Me.
Oh, just
Me.
it.
It's the jersey.
Jersey. I didn't have anything white, so I went to the
Can I
laundry
have-
room and just
I
grabbed it.
went to the
appreciate
dirty
it.
laundry.
This is the first time I've been sitting here being like, I smell. Like, oh my god, why do I smell so much?
This is a clean jersey too. They just did
Like, do I
laundry.
smell? Like,
What am I thinking? I have a nap right now. I'm not-
okay.
confirmed, I got right up in there, don't worry.
I was like, oh my god.
Yeah,
It's been so
here's the swole,
distracting.
just show it.
I'm gonna go like this.
All right, guys. 1 minute on the clock.
Okay.
Wait, what am I practicing here?
You're practicing your launch
Like my
and then what you want to see kids do.
my launch? Like what you mean?
So the launch from your lesson, whatever it is,
Like your hug.
your hook, yeah.
Oh,
And then scripting into or going into your MVP directions.
yeah. Okay.
What did you script?
So I just scripted MVP directions because the launch is the do now, which is have you ever refused to follow direction or rule because you felt it was unjust? What was the result of consequences? And after we share out, I like usually here, whatever, I'll do it.
Go for it.
Woo! Yes.
All right, back in 3 and 2 and 1. All right, let's go ahead and talk about our do now really quick. Raise your hand, please, if you can tell me a time that you've ever refused to follow a direction or a rule. Christine, raise your hand because you do it every day. What I want you to do now is tell me what it was, Sarah. What was that rule and what was the rule you broke and what was the consequence?
Miss G told me to take my hood off, and I refused, and then walked out of the room and gave her the middle finger, and so that's the consequence. Was I had an after-school detention.
Do you feel like that after-school detention was just? Was that a fair consequence for your actions?
Yeah, it was probably fair.
Was it worth it?
Yeah, it was worth it.
Okay, that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today with Claudette Cloven. She stood up for something, she broke the rules, she knew it was wrong, but she believed that it was worth it. What I need everyone to do right now is silently open your books to page 30. 30. Berman has her book open to page 30, and just so I know you're there, show it to me real quick once you get there. I got everyone 100%. I'm going to read the first paragraph. What I want you to do on your packet when we're finished or while we're reading is hashtag the main topic. Like, what was this paragraph about? What was the topic of the first paragraph? I'm going to read the first paragraph. Please follow along with your finger or pencil. Joseph has his finger ready on the first word. And Esperanza.
All right, Christine. What's one thing she did well?
She expected 100% participation. Held me to it.
Someone, what's a grow that we would want her to fix before Monday?
question. I know you said the annotation job was the topic for the first paragraph, but maybe like a thinking question for the entire sections, like say we're thinking about Claudette Cloven, like how is she demonstrating this value of standing up for things even though there's consequence or something like that?
Absolutely.
And I think maybe just even, and you will probably have it on there, an example of exactly what it looks like. You could do, if you did hashtags the day before, showing an exemplar example of that, so you know exactly what you're walking around looking for. Sweet, awesome, thank you.
Can I get that water?
It's in my office.
Bro, I'm so
Right
thirsty.
after-
Oh my God, I'm so
Ah.
thirsty. That's why I did this.
I hit it because
There you go, there you go.
Coffee make you thirsty, thirsty.
Christina
Thank you so
Joseph,
much.
which one you wanna go?
I'll go. It's not gonna be that far. I'll go. So we are doing, poetry, it's the first visit back to poetry in, like a week, so it's going to, require shaking off some rust, I think, or some dust. Similarly, the launch is a question in the do now, so we will come back from the do now and, discuss question number 2 on the do now, so, all eyes on me in 3. All eyes on me in 2. I have Joseph's eyes, I have Joey's eyes. Thank you. 1, and we're ready, thank you. I want you to go ahead and look at the do now, number 2, question number 2. I see people tracking, checking their work. I saw all the lines filled in. I'm looking for silent hands to go ahead and share out. We have immigrants in this school. We don't talk to them like we talk to our friends because we don't speak the language. But if you could talk to them and you could interview them, what would you ask them about their experience moving to this country? Give me some ideas. I want to see some silent hands. What would you ask our immigrant peers about their moving experience coming to this country? Yes, sir. I mean, yes, ma'am.
Is the food good?
Is the food good? Yeah? That's interesting. I'm going to come back to you once you see the title of our poem today. Yes,
Why
ma'am?
don't you speak English? That's what a 5th grader would ask.
Yes, ma'am.
our school's aggravating there too.
Oh, trying to find some kind of common ground. And I like that. That's how we're going to build on trying to understand this poem today. Because we know that poems have 2 meanings, the literal meaning and then this metaphorical meaning. So if you go ahead and turn this page, get to task 3, and you're going to see the name of the poem. Dear, will you read this? Because I asked you.
There's an orange tree out there.
Okay. So we're talking about food and we're talking about immigration. Those 2 things don't seem to go together in my mind. So your job, as we are reading this poem, is to think about what the literal words are saying, and then think about that do now question and the immigrants' experience coming into this country. We gotta make those connections. As you read, I want you to put an exclamation point next to the lines that seem to make that connection for you, and we will talk about it at the end.
Joey, what's something that you did really well?
I really liked the launch question. I thought it was like one of those like teaching moments of like things that are applicable to like within our school building and applicable within our book. So it's bridging like what we learn in English class and how it's relevant to your own life, which is like a really cool thing to be doing, and should be happening. And yeah, I also think like your expectations are clear on like what they're doing and what they're thinking and when and why. So like my mind is always like in the right place.
Joseph, what would be a push?
To go exactly from the protocol.
Glad we're filming this novel.
Get the minutes that it was.
I would say, you did a good job of like setting purpose for the first read, but thinking about those questions that we have to decide, like who's the author, who, what, when, where questions, just kind of like naming like these are the things as we read for the first time that we're looking for.
So what would be one thing you could look for in your class on Monday from the practice? What's your big takeaway?
So in the annotation expectation, I need to give them something different that while they're thinking about the deeper meaning, also gets them to the first version, the literal meaning with those initial questions.
Great, awesome. Firm Daddy, let's go.
Don't love that name.
What was the last one I called you all? Fernius, Firm,
Palmer calls me Ferminator, you can steal that.
okay.
Who's that?
Palmer.
Firm Gully, that was it. Firm
Oh,
Gully.
I like that
I got
one. Oh.
So we're gonna start with reviewing our do now, same thing, use that as the launch question. Our do now question today is, in today's reading, Mama tells a lie to Tia Louise for the good of her family. Is there ever a time where it is okay to lie? Why or why not? Raise your hand if you said yes, there are times when it is okay to lie. Excellent, Sally, put your hands down. Sign hand if you said no, there is never an okay time to lie. Interesting. Miss Denson, when did you say it is okay to lie?
Whenever you feel like it.
Why?
Freedom of speech.
And so what benefit does that have?
You get to decide. No, I'm just kidding. Whenever, like, I think it's okay to lie when you feel like it'll help you out.
So it'll help you out, that's one good reason. Did somebody else have a different reason why it might be okay to lie, Mr. Kohler?
So last night I was watching A Million Little Things, and this guy lies about whether or not he's the baby daddy because he doesn't want to offend his wife and his kids
To not hurt feelings.
and their circle of friends. So at that point, he may have been okay.
Yeah,
Who's hurting the kid then?
long term. So,
Cool.
I agreed with you. I actually think, most of the time it's a value of mine to be honest and to be truthful and to be a loyal person, but there are some times when you want to lie because you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings or for safety, right? Like to keep people safe. Today we are going to read a section where Mama actually does have to tell a lie to Tia Louise. Go ahead and open your book up to page 39. You're there in 10. Beat me in 9. 8. Book is open at 7. 6. Excellent. We are reading the next chapter in Esperanza today. As we are reading, we are thinking about what the conflict is, what that problem is, and then how our characters are going to respond to that conflict. We are reading in partners at a voice level 1. Window side partner reads first. Partners, voice level 1. Window side partner reads first. Go.
Insane.
Woo!
Yeah.
Denson, what's one thing she did well?
You most definitely. I like your energy. I was looking at this thing here. I like your tone, firmness of your voice. Just like you asked a great question. Engagement, the word that you used to describe it. I saw that. I was engaged.
I think I'd add on to your CFU. As soon as you gave your VP directions, you went back and said them immediately. A push would be like after you did your directions, page 31, 5 minutes, silent solo, do your CFU, pause, scan. Go. I think it's a push for all of us just to make sure we're pausing and scanning, because a lot of the rooms I'm in, I see we quick directions and go, and then kids actually haven't had the time to, and you haven't had the time to scan to see if there are any misconceptions.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right, finish this up.
My do now is a story summary, so I fill in the blanks so that they can remember what we read since this is on Monday. So then normally I would have like a slide that says launch and has the question up, so like they do have it in front of them. It's just not the do now. So like we've gone over the do now and however. All right, as I'm in 3 and 2. I don't even need the rest of the numbers. We're all tracking. Great. All right, today we're diving into our story, and at this point, our tribe has been traveling for 6 months. How long?
6 months.
And we're gonna start thinking about what would that feel feel like to be out on this journey for 6 months? So my turn and talk question for you if you're tracking the board is, if you were to go on a journey for 6 months, how do you think you would be feeling after that much time? How do you think you would feel? Turn and talk to your partner, and plot twist, be ready to share what your partner has to say when we come back together. All right, turn and talk, go. Immediately they get started. All right, bring back in 3. Boys stop, tracking me in 2, in 1. Boys off in 0. Great. All right, how would we feel after a 6-month journey? Silent hands, how would we feel after a 6-month journey? All right, track Joseph, eyes move to Joseph.
I would feel very homesick, and I would really miss home.
And do we hear he's using those words of our unit? Our whole question is, what does home mean to us? It's like you were staged to be there. Great, I'll take one more silent hand. What does home, or sorry, how would we feel? One more silent hand. How would you feel after 6 months? Come on, we all answered this question. Track, Mr. Cole.
This woman said she'd probably smell like her tutu.
I didn't say that.
Yikes.
I said like you do, but.
Yikes. But I also want to shout out Mr. Kohler because he shared what his partner had said. He forgot to remind Joseph to do that. So, thank you for that. It's not my tutu that smells, it's your jersey, and it's driving me nuts. All right, we're going to dive right into our reading, though, and as we do that, but the serious, we're thinking about how does our tribe feel after these 6 months? So you've got 10 seconds to silently be on page 80, page what? 80. All right, I'm looking for the first people there, silently on page 80 and 5. You're there in 4, and you're tracking me. In 3, Christine's already there, and I've got her eyes, so I know she's there. In 2. And 1. All right, Miss G is going to start off by reading. So when Miss G reads, your eyes are on text, your eyes are on what?
Text.
For a voice level 0 with our pencils in our hand tracking. All right, let's go.
Joseph, what's one thing she did well?
Her MVP directions and her engagement and joy was phenomenal.
And so what would you say is a growth area or a push for Monday?
Give annotation job. You will show your thinking by. Because I know they're tracking with their pencil, which is cool too, because they're following you.
Yeah, so
For their
I
first
struggle
read.
with this because they have questions, like comprehension questions that I'll
Yeah.
stop and ask, and then they'll drop down thoughts. But I definitely struggle with annotation job when it's like a book that you can't underline important information in. I'm just like,
But I think this is your annotation
Yeah.
job.
I want us, because I know that we're running out of time, take 30 seconds, write down your biggest takeaway from this practice that you're going to put into your lesson for Monday.
Can it be the author's grasp part too? Or just this?
Focus on the
read?
practice
Okay,
piece.
okay.
You and I are going to talk about this craft.
Read for just enjoy
Yeah.
that piece, okay.
So the practice is on the before reading. This is on your launch and your annotation directions. And then whenever you're ready, you can read it out. I'm going to jot it down so I can include it in our ELA blast for what to look for when we observe on Monday.
Annotation job. So when I'm reading, giving a thinking job, and when students are reading, giving an annotation job.
Mine's like literally naming that this first read is just a literal read, not for deeper meaning.
Okay.
The misconception cues, so like having, just playing that out.
So you'll have, yeah, everyone's gonna have a misconception cue box. I think it's one thing to have it and another thing to actually use it. Like when we talk about using our exemplars, make sure you're like, oh shit, I don't see them doing X. I've already got a question prompted for that. Andrew?
I think my MVP directions on partner reading. I think when we're group reading or silent solo reading, it's like very clear that it's their thinking. I think that that's a top topic partner reading.
Yeah, when you look in your prep and practice, that's actually, we might do the vision of excellence. Nope, Yeah, Vision of Excellence, the last page, it tells you exactly what's, this is for the read for deeper meaning, but when you're looking at your MVP directions for what they're doing for partner indicator reading, it has it right here for you, and just using this in your script, kind of as a checkbox to see. And like when we walked around yesterday, that was things we were looking for, is what is the percentage of students during this reading that was independent? What are the percentage of each one's, like what's posture look like, what is eyes on text, all those things. So these are things that can definitely guide your MVP directions. Any other questions? My phone's about to die.
I do, I have a question. I'm giving students their own book